Emma had always been practical, focused on the things that truly mattered in life: her career, her friendships, and her sense of self. But after her date with Ryan, a fissure had cracked through her carefully constructed confidence. The raw edges of his words replayed in her mind every now and then. "You didn't try hard enough. You look tired." They followed her like shadows, intruding during quiet moments. It wasn't that she missed Ryan, he was, after all, just a fleeting presence in her life. What haunted her was the vulnerability he had unearthed in her. For years, Emma had prided herself on not needing validation from others. And yet his rejection had made her question everything. She wondered how many other people had looked at her and thought the same but hadn't said it aloud. When David entered her life, things began to shift. His kindness, his patience, and his ability to see her for who she truly was helped Emma begin to rebuild herself. Yet, the sting of Ryan's words remained like an old scar, visible only to her but tender when pressed. That morning, after she finished her letter to Ryan, Emma tucked it into her desk drawer with a deep breath. It was a symbolic act, a way to close a chapter she no longer wanted to reread. But healing wasn't linear, and as much as she wanted to believe she had moved past it all, part of her knew that real closure was still out of reach. When David texted back that afternoon, "Dinner at your place tonight? I'll bring dessert," she smiled. The idea of a quiet night with him, free of pretense and filled with genuine laughter, was exactly what she needed. Little did she know, the evening would mark a turning point, not just in her relationship with David, but in her journey toward reclaiming her sense of self. Dinner with David started out just as Emma had hoped. They cooked together in her small kitchen, laughing as he fumbled with a knife and claimed, "I'm much better at eating than prepping." It was easy, natural, and comforting. But as they sat down to eat, Emma's phone buzzed on the counter. She ignored it at first, assuming it was a notification about something unimportant. When it buzzed again, though, David raised an eyebrow. "Someone really wants your attention," he teased. Emma reached for the phone, glancing at the screen. Her breath hitched. The message wasn't from a random app or a friend. It was from Ryan. Her first instinct was to delete it without reading. But curiosity, tinged with frustration, got the better of her. She opened the message. "Hey Emma, I've been thinking about our date and how things ended. I wanted to apologize if I hurt you. I've been reflecting, and I think I was unfair. You're an amazing person, and I'm sorry if I made you feel otherwise. Maybe we could talk sometime." Emma stared at the screen, her emotions colliding. Anger, confusion, a strange, fleeting sense of vindication. And beneath it all, a question: why now? "Everything okay?" David asked, his fork pausing midair. Emma hesitated, then handed him the phone. "It's from Ryan, the guy I told you about." David read the message, his brow furrowing. "Wow. Do you think he's sincere?" "I don't know," Emma admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore it, but part of me wants to reply. Not because I want anything from him, but because, I don't know. Closure, maybe." David set the phone down and looked at her with a steady gaze. "Whatever you decide, make sure it's for you, not for him." His words stayed with her long after he left that night. Emma didn't reply to Ryan right away. She let the message sit, untouched, for 2 days. She told herself she was too busy to deal with it, but in reality, she was wrestling with what to say, if she said anything at all. Finally, on a quiet evening, she picked up her phone and typed a response. "Hi Ryan. I appreciate the apology. I've moved on, but I hope you've learned to think more carefully about the things you say to people." She hesitated before hitting send. Was it too curt? Too dismissive? But no, she wasn't responsible for cushioning his feelings. She hit send and put her phone down, not expecting a reply. When her phone buzzed less than an hour later, she felt a mix of annoyance and curiosity. Ryan's response was longer this time. "Thanks for replying. I deserve that. I think about the things I said to you a lot. I was insecure and projecting my own issues onto you. I've been trying to work on myself since then. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you know I truly regret how I treated you." Emma frowned. The message felt sincere, but she wasn't sure what he expected from her. "Forgiveness? A second chance?" She typed back, "I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care." With that, she blocked his number. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of finality. The door was closed, And she was the one who had closed it. Emma didn't tell David about the second message from Ryan, but he noticed a shift in her demeanor. She seemed lighter, more at ease. One evening, as they sat on her couch watching a movie, David turned to her and said, "You know, I've been meaning to tell you something." Emma paused the movie, looking at him curiously. "What's up?" David hesitated, then smiled. "I don't think I've ever met someone as resilient as you. The way you've handled everything. You're incredible, Emma. I hope you know that." Her throat tightened. She wasn't used to hearing words like that, not even from herself. "Thank you," she said softly. David reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. "You don't have to be anyone but yourself, you know. That's all I'll ever want." For the first time in years, Emma felt truly seen. And this time, it didn't feel like she was being judged. It felt like she was being loved. Months later, as Emma and David walked hand in hand through the park, she reflected on how far she had come. The doubts that Ryan's words had planted in her mind had withered away, replaced by a newfound sense of self-worth. She no longer compared herself to the polished images on social media. She no longer questioned whether she was enough. She had learned to embrace the freckles, the scars, the quirks that made her unique. And she had surrounded herself with people who saw those things as beautiful. David paused by a bench, pulling her to a stop. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. Emma raised an eyebrow as he pulled out a small notebook. "What's this?" "Open it," he said, smiling. Inside, the pages were filled with little notes, compliments, memories, silly jokes they'd shared. On the last page, he had written, "You are enough, just as you are. Don't ever forget that." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She looked up at him, her heart full. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "For reminding me that I'm worth it," she said. "And for showing me what love really looks like." As they walked away, Emma realized that she didn't need closure from Ryan or validation from anyone else. She had everything she needed right here, in herself, in David, and in the life she was building. And for the first time, she felt truly free. Emma glanced down at the steam rising from her cup of tea, its soft swirls masking her hesitation. She could feel David's gentle gaze on her, patient as always, waiting for her to open up. She knew she could trust him. He had proven that over and over again in the months they had been together. But admitting she had let Ryan back into her thoughts, even for a moment, felt like a betrayal of the progress she had made. "It's nothing really," she said with a forced smile. "Just something old resurfacing." David raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Old like an ex?" he asked lightly, but his tone was careful, not accusatory. Emma sighed, deciding there was no point in hiding it. "Sort of. I saw a photo of him on Instagram. It wasn't intentional. I was tagged in a group photo from last year, and it just reminded me of everything. Of how much his words got to me." David set his cup down on the bench, turning his full attention to her. "And how do you feel about it now?" "That's the thing," Emma said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I shouldn't feel anything. He's not in my life anymore and I've moved on. But it's like he left the shadow behind, and every now and then it creeps back in." David was silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. Then he reached out, his hand covering hers. "Emma, moving on doesn't mean forgetting completely. It doesn't mean the scars go away. It just means you're strong enough to live with them." His words were simple, but they settled in her heart like a balm. She squeezed his hand, grateful for his understanding. "Thank you," she whispered. But as they sat in the quiet of the park, Emma realized something. Ryan's shadow wasn't going to fade on its own. If she truly wanted to let go, she needed to face it head-on. That evening, after David kissed her goodbye and headed home, Emma found herself sitting at her desk, staring at the letter she had written to Ryan months ago. She had tucked it away in her drawer, thinking it was enough to write it, to release the weight of her anger and hurt onto the page. But now, as she read the words again, she felt a different kind of clarity. The letter wasn't just about Ryan, it was about herself. It was about reclaiming the power she had given him, about refusing to let his shallow opinions dictate her worth any longer. Emma picked up a pen and began to write again, this time in a fresh notebook. Not to Ryan, but to herself. "Dear Emma, you've come so far. Do you remember how it felt, sitting in front of that mirror and wondering if you were enough? Do you remember the weight of his words? How they chipped away at your confidence? How they made you question everything you knew about yourself? Look at where you are now. You've built a life that's yours on your terms. You've found love that doesn't demand you change. You've found joy in the simplest moments. You've proven, time and time again, that you are enough. But here's the thing. Healing isn't linear. There will be days when the shadows creep back in, when the echoes of old doubts whisper in your ear. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you're human. So keep going, Emma. Keep choosing yourself every single day. Because you are worth it. As she finished the letter, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer as Ryan's. One was a goodbye, the other was a promise, and together, they were a reminder of how far she had come. Life continued as it always did. Emma threw herself into her work, her hobbies, and her time with David. She started taking small steps outside her comfort zone, joining a local book club, trying a new yoga class, even signing up for a painting workshop. Each new experience felt like another brick in the foundation of the life she was rebuilding. One evening, as she was scrolling through her emails, a familiar name appeared in her inbox. For a moment, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. But there it was, Ryan's name, bold and unmistakable. Her heart raced as she opened the email, unsure of what to expect. Hi, Emma. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I felt like I needed to reach out. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I realized that I owe you an apology. The way I treated you on that date, the things I said, it was wrong. I see that now. The truth is I was insecure. I had this stupid idea of what a perfect woman should be, and I projected that onto you. But you were real, Emma. You were honest and kind, and I didn't appreciate that at the time. I'm sorry for hurting you. You deserved better. I don't expect a response. I just wanted to say my piece. Take care, Ryan. Emma stared at the screen, her emotions a whirlwind of surprise, anger, and something she couldn't quite name. Part of her wanted to delete the email without a second thought, to refuse him the closure he was seeking. But another part of her, the part that had worked so hard to heal, felt something close to pity for him. In the end, she didn't respond. She didn't need to. His apology, while unexpected, didn't change the fact that she had already moved on. She had built a life that didn't revolve around his opinion of her, and she wasn't about to let him back in. She archived the email and closed her laptop, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Weeks later, Emma attended a community event with David, a local fundraiser for an animal shelter. The room was buzzing with energy, filled with laughter and the sound of live music. Emma felt at ease, her hand intertwined with David's as they browsed the silent auction items. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him. Ryan. He was standing near the bar, talking to a group of people. He looked almost the same, well-dressed, confident, but there was something about his posture that seemed smaller, less certain. Emma's heart raced, but not out of fear or anger. She realized, in that moment, that she felt nothing for him. No resentment, no longing. Just nothing. David noticed her hesitation. You okay? He asked, squeezing her hand. Emma smiled, her eyes meeting his. Yeah, I'm more than okay. She turned away from Ryan without a second glance, focusing instead on the man beside her, the one who saw her for who she truly was and loved her for it. Months turned into years, and Emma's life continued to flourish. She and David moved in together, filling their shared space with laughter, books, and the occasional heated board game debate. She started mentoring young women in her field, helping them build confidence and navigate their own journeys of self-discovery. Every now and then, she thought about Ryan, not with anger or regret, but with gratitude. He had been a catalyst, a mirror reflecting her own insecurities back at her. And while his rejection had hurt, it had also forced her to confront the parts of herself she had been afraid to embrace. One evening, as she sat on the balcony with David, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, he turned to her and said, You know, you've got this glow about you. Like you're exactly where you're meant to be. Emma smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she believed it. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and she wouldn't trade it for anything.